Well, friends, let me just start by saying thank you for the tremendous amount of support this month. Going over 50 subscribers was not what I thought we would actually accomplish and that would happen here on the channel this month and honestly this soon. And I never even thought that a documentary that I made in 7 days on a very tight schedule would break over 1,000 views. As of the time that I'm recording, it is at 1.5 thousand views, and I've received some really positive feedback and a lot of people that are really engaging with the documentary. So thank you to you all that have supported me here on the channel. Not only here on the channel, but on every other platform, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. I've seen your guys' support and it's really been blowing me away. So thank you. Now, today's video is different than most that I do. It's not really a park news video like I did on Wednesday, but it is going to tap into some more recent changes for maybe a temporary time, but hopefully a permanent change. But anyways, we're going to be looking at some changes in the Disney parks, and we're going to be theorizing. Now today I'm brainstorming, I'm not exactly blue skying, and I'm just sharing my thoughts on hopefully a potential change that we could actually see in the future. But before we actually move on, I do want to say, due to the subject material here today being Fantastic Four, the first steps, I do want to actually say that I'm not going to be getting into spoiler territory. So if you have not seen the film, you're actually fine. I'm only going to detail one scene very vaguely, and the only reason I'm going to detail the scene is because of a certain song that is played, which you and I will probably really know what it is since we're park fans and be acquainted with it. And it made me really happy and it helped fit in my theory here. So without further ado, let's get into things. Now, for years, fans of the Disney theme parks have begged, and I mean it, really we have begged for a brand new Tomorrowland. Walt's vision for this land was to display what the future could hold, and sadly it's failed in that vision, at least in my opinion. The land has become very bland with its architecture. The actual look of Tomorrowland is really holding back the land from being amazing. And yes, I do mean this at both parks. The rides are fun, even though I think some should go, such as Autopia in Disneyland and the Tomorrowland Speedway out there in Disney World, or the submarines at Disneyland really do need to go in my opinion. But the rides aren't even that big of a problem right now. The largest problem is how the land looks in its architecture, color palette, and its entire theme that it tries to convey. Tomorrowland hasn't been updated since 1998 in Disneyland and 1994 at the Magic Kingdom. It has been over 30 years since the last major overhaul of the land in Walt Disney World, and almost 30 years since Disneyland got an overhaul. Now, to be honest, I think that Disney World got more right than Disneyland did with the overhaul in the 1990s. I think that Disney World looks far better with their, version of Tomorrowland. I do think that both need to change, but Disney World's Tomorrowland, it's on a better track. It functions better, for me at least. Disneyland is a sad version of what could be great and what some might say could become a fantastic land. Now, each and every year at D23, I think fans have been anticipating Disney to announce a brand new Tomorrowland. And when I say each and every year, I mean like the past maybe 8 years. They've been really anticipating this. Instead, we get announcements such as Monsters Inc. Land and, the new Cars Land and Villains Land, which is all great and cool. Don't get me wrong. But it would be really nice if Disney would pay more attention to its existing lands that really do need the help. But friends, I have a solution for Tomorrowland and a theory about Disney possibly redoing Tomorrowland sooner than we all think. Today, right now, the year is 2025, and we just got the Fantastic Four First Steps, and I thought it was a pretty good movie. Now, I believe that Disney will take inspiration from this film to create a retro-futuristic version of Tomorrowland. Let me explain. Now, right when the trailers came out, a lot of Disney Parks fans noticed how the sets and the aesthetic of the film looked very similar to the original Tomorrowland and some of the original Tomorrowland art itself. Now, some parks fans speculated If this movie did well, would Disney Imagineering take this style and apply it to Tomorrowland? The film is out and it's doing pretty well. I think it's actually kind of shocking some people of how well it's doing, especially considering how big Superman has been and how Superman, kind of showed fans of Marvel like maybe Marvel was over, but this opened better domestically, which is cool. We're not going to really get into the box office. I'm just mentioning like, hey, it's doing well and it's doing better than people thought. Now, the film itself does have a very distinct world with how the architecture is laid out. It looks great, and it reminds me not only of old Tomorrowland, but also The Incredibles, which I will touch on a little bit later. Now, Disney has utilized their own parks to promote the film, showing us that you could meet the Fantastic Four and Herbie in Tomorrowland only. Not at Avengers Campus, but in Tomorrowland at both Disney World and Disneyland. Now, from everything that I've seen online, it looks like this was a great decision for Disney. In fact, Disney surprised fans when they had Johnny Storm projected onto Space Mountain at night. The Fantastic Four really have taken over Tomorrowland, and I think we could really get this retro-futuristic Tomorrowland in the same style of the Fantastic Four, the old Disney sketches for Tomorrowland, the Jetsons, and opening day Tomorrowland. I know that the Jetsons aren't a Disney property, but just that type of a look. Now, I not only have the success of this film and the tie-ins to the park to back my theory of this happening soon, but I also have that certain song choice that I mentioned earlier that is played in this film to tie into my theory. Now, in the film, a montage of sorts is going on, and I very, very quickly noticed that they were playing an old Tomorrowland loop. Yes, an old Tomorrowland loop as the scene goes on. Now, trust me, this is no big spoiler for the film, but the scene does depict Reed Richards doing some math and the family just kind of, working, they're going through their own lives, they're working throughout their home, they're just being a family. And this classic song featured on not only the People Mover, but also the monorail is playing. Nation on Wheels is playing by George Burns. Now, I was really blown away when I was in the theater and hearing this song play, and I was very, very shocked and surprised. Now, consider the fact that Michael Giacchino was the composer for this film's score, and they chose to play Nation on Wheels in a scene with significantly less dialogue than most of the scenes in this film, and more so the family doing things around their home and just, being a family. Now, George Burns did create the song Nation on Wheels for Disney, and it has since then been associated with the People Mover and the monorail. Even Google's AI that shows up whenever you search anything on the internet will show you that it was most recently used in Fantastic Four First Steps. And according to their AI, they only list this first TV episode where it appeared, the Disney parks, and this film. Sure, this just could be an artistic choice by Giacchino or the director, Matt Shankman, to include it, especially considering how this song debuted in 1959 on the episode titled Magic Highway USA. This episode is actually a part of the Walt Disney Presents series.
And now, looking over the highway situation is a typical American motorist, Walt Disney.
Keeping on the move is an old American custom, and a good one. The most important symbol in the progress of our nation is the highway. Our forefathers, seeking plenty of elbow room, always looked upon distance as a challenge. It took a great deal of courage to open up the frontiers in vehicles like this Conestoga wagon. One of the many freedoms we enjoy today, yet often take for granted, is the freedom of the American road, to come and go as we please in our pursuit of happiness. Today we enjoy the pleasure and convenience of going places in engineering marvels such as this modern automobile. How this all came about is our story. Magic Highway, USA.
In this episode, Walt goes on to detail what he envisions for this Magic Highway, and for those of you that do not know, Walt was really into transportation and solving transportation issues, and he was really, really hyper-fixated on this sort of stuff. The rest of this episode kind of showcases like futuristic ideas and sort of alludes to the monorail, But this song Nation on Wheels is played in the background, and is it super significant to Tomorrowland? Well, I kind of think so, since we're seeing futuristic versions of transportation and, Walt's fascination with that, which leads into the sort of monorail look and aesthetic. But here's some more of this clip.
We're a nation on wheels. We like to go places.
So does the placement of this George Burns song actually mean anything? In the grand scheme of things, probably not. But as I've already said, this was all about transportation and the future of transportation, since Walt was hyper fixated on the fact that we could improve transportation issues. I mean, he lived in LA and really wanted to make like monorails typical as like sort of bullet trains to, minimize traffic and everything. Does the song placement mean anything for Tomorrowland and the Tomorrowland overhaul and how it ties into the Fantastic Four? I kind of think so, but does this episode, where it first originated, have any significance? I kind of think so as well, since, it was then used on the monorail and the People Mover, both, big for Tomorrowland. But, in the grand scheme of things, is this original origin of the song all that massive or important? I don't know. That's up for you to decide. I personally think that it is, sort of, because, as I've already stated, it's about transportation, and the kinetic energy of transportation is a huge part of Tomorrowland, especially considering the People Mover and Autopia being large attractions there. Now, this could just be Shankman paying homage to the parks itself, or it could be intentionally placed here to signify a greater plan. And honestly, I think that this is too intentional for the greater picture of Tomorrowland, possibly returning to that retro future look that we all know and love. Sure, if we got this Tomorrowland, it wouldn't be as futuristic as Tomorrowland could be, but it beats what we could potentially have, which honestly I am a little bit afraid of, which is a very futuristic Tomorrowland, but one that just artistically looks dull and is more brutalist architecture. I fear that that could be a future of Tomorrowland, and honestly I prefer this. I'd prefer the pleasant, fun look at the future that's a little bit cartoonish and, has some concepts that were still around the 1960s and haven't really become a part of our future today, such as a flying car. Now, imagine a Tomorrowland with the flying cars and the fascination with space exploration. Maybe we could adjust the mission to land on the moon to a mission to land on Mars to make it more relevant to our time. Imagine a Tomorrowland where droids and robots made for the parks as original characters and those from our favorite Disney properties roam. We would get R2-D2, Herbie, Wall-E, Eve, Baymax, and Zurg, and I'm sure many, many others. Now, you might ask what both parks would actually offer in the new Tomorrowland, and I have some guesses. I have guesses that aren't really me blue skying. These aren't really like, big things that I'm just throwing out there because I want them. Yes, I do want these, but honestly, they seem probable. For starters, I do think it would be possible to make the Wall-E dark ride. Those of you that don't know, Wall-E has a lot of fans, and a lot of people out there that really love the Disney parks want a dark ride omni mover of Wall-E. And even though the film is not set in the 1960s, I feel like Disney could make it work since it is a fan favorite and fans would really, really appreciate it. I feel like they could make the exterior of this look really nice and fit in the theming, and I just think it would work. Now, I do think for Disneyland, they would have to bring back the People Mover to give us that kinetic energy, give us that retro look, give us the ride that featured the song that was tied into the Fantastic Four film. I think this would work. I think in both Disneyland and Disney World, they would do one of two things with their racing rides. They would either demolish the rides and implement a new ride, or an alternative being the interactive experience. The Moana experience at Epcot has proven to be a success with the fans, and I think that if you made an educational and fun experience like that, but for the future, it could be a really, really big hit. The other idea is to create a ride where the cars literally fly. I know, it sounds insane, but Disney Imagineering, they have worked their magic many times before, And I think they could pull it off. Now, I think to make the flying cars really work and be really, really effective and stunning is have them out in an open area where you could actually walk by and see flying cars and people driving flying cars and racing each other. I think that would really add to the kinetic energy of the land and would really impress people. Like, it would be very, very impressive. Not sure how they would do it, but I think that they could do it. Now, the final property or ride that they could do is an indoor Incredibles dark ride. I already said that we would, talk about the Incredibles. The world of the Incredibles, to me, is very, very similar to this retro future look. I think that Brad Bird was definitely inspired by that sort of stuff. I feel like he was very inspired by Disney's Tomorrowland. I mean, the dude literally went on to make the Tomorrowland film, which we'll touch on in a bit. But I think that his world building was very much so, set in the time frame of like the 1950s and 60s. That's when the Incredibles, I believe, are set in, and it fits this look. I think fans would actually enjoy a dark ride where we could get some time with the Incredibles, not just a thrill ride. And because of their, technology and their world, I think that it honestly does fit in Tomorrowland. It kind of does. The technology that the superheroes have, it fits there. The technology of the world, the world itself, it fits in Tomorrowland. I really do think that it works. If Disney did this refurbishment, I would hope, really hope, that they would introduce a new and original ride with new and original stories. At least one original ride and one original show, but I would hope multiple rides and at least one show. I think Disney is very, very scared to abandon the films that they have made and own in their own theme parks. From my research, it seems like the last original ride that we got non-IP related was in 2006 for parks in the United States. That ride was Expedition Everest. It's been almost 20 years since the last original ride here in the United States, and I honestly think that Disney needs to do more with their original rides. I think fans would really like something new and original. The closest that we got to original new rides would be like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway or the new Test Track. Now, for Mickey and Minnie, you can make that argument that it is an original ride since Mickey is just the face of Disney and that he's actually never gotten like this full-on theatrical film. Yes, he has the cartoons and the shorts and everything, but also Disney's kind of given up on that. They just use him as a mascot, so it felt, to me at least, a little bit more original. And then you have Test Track 3.0 and even 2.0, even though I didn't enjoy it. That is an original ride, even though it's a retheming of an old ride. It kind of is its own original ride since they are so drastic than the last version of Test Track. But at the end of the day, it is just a very expensive and very impressive redo of an old ride. In my version of this Tomorrowland refurbishment, and honestly the one that I do think that they are getting closer to taking into consideration and actually doing, it would give Disney the opportunity to do some original rides, some original shows, and original theme park characters. Sure, they can do the rides that I mentioned, but I'd also love something new and original that we've never seen before. And I would want at least 2 rides that were original, something that we've never seen before. And no, I'm not even talking about thrill rides. I'm talking about like dark rides, like actual things with characters and memorable songs and such. Now, oddly enough, Universal Studios seems to kind of have a bit more original ideas in their parks with the brand new Epic Universe. The entire story of the park itself, even though it is, inspired by mythology, it's pretty original. It's pretty original compared to anything that Disney is doing these days. Of course, all tying into the Land Celestial Park, that entire part of the park is very original, but the entire overarching theme of connecting all those portals together and that story is quite original. Celestial Park might nod to some really small details of iconic Universal films, such as the flux capacitor on the back of the roller coaster, but their 2 rides there are pretty original. Even though it is a roller coaster and a carousel, they're really, really original with their mythology and their characters. The entire Celestial Park is very, very original in how it is concerned with their restaurants and just theming in general. And I think Universal was winning in the original atmosphere. And even though Dark Universe is inspired by their own monsters and, literature that, inspired those monster movies, it feels original since those monsters haven't exactly been milked to death and they're basing it off of the original monsters from like the 1940s and 30s. And I don't know, it just feels more original. And I'd love Disney to do more original things. If Disney had allowed their own Imagineers to create some new rides, shows, characters, and even lands with original stories based on their imagination, I think we as fans would be very happy and just excited at the prospect and this idea and the news alone that there would be a brand new original land or original ride. Tomorrowland is the perfect place to start. At the end of the day, you and I are asking the same question. What is the actual likelihood of any sort of a Tomorrowland refurbishment, where this entire land changes? And to me, I honestly do think it's high. I believe that Disney sees what us fans want. They might not always listen, but I do think that they see what we want. I actually believe that in a few years, we will see the return of Muppet Vision 3D at Disney's California Adventure, which will likely take over where Mickey's PhilharMagic is today. And I think that Disney also sees that fans want a brand new Tomorrowland. I honestly do think bringing Tron to Disney World was not only Disney adding a brand new thrill ride, but testing the waters of what could they do for a new Tomorrowland. Now, of course, the ride itself doesn't exactly fit the Fantastic Four look, but, it could work, and it could work in this new version of Tomorrowland that I personally am hoping for. I also think that Disney utilizing the Fantastic Four in Tomorrowland was a very intentional choice because they saw the look of that world in the film and they knew that it would fit Tomorrowland and it would bring back the memories of the old Tomorrowland that we used to have and the old Tomorrowland that we see in, these Disney theme park documentaries and all this stuff. I also am pretty sure that Disney sort of leaked the idea of changing Tomorrowland with concept art. Remember when I covered on this channel all the exciting changes for Disneyland? And we got this piece that displays this new entrance of the new and, sort of original but also new Disneyland sign and that bridge that was going to connect the parking structure to the front gates. And this was about Disneyland Forward. You remember that? Well, you're seeing it here. And remember how we saw this right here, Tomorrowland being covered in the background by a new white awning. I personally believe that Disney had plans or has plans to change Tomorrowland. Now, one last little point. Think back to 2015 when Disney had decided that they would be making a movie about Tomorrowland called Tomorrowland. They entrusted Brad Bird to direct it. Brad Bird, of course, as I said, being the director behind The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2. Now, the Tomorrowland movie, it was a mess. It bombed, and it was a major disappointment to me and many other theme park fans, but many of us thought that if it did well, Disney would actually redo Tomorrowland with this version in mind. And honestly, I think that that's a pretty probable theory. I kind of do think that Disney has utilized that movie and been like, okay, if this version of the Tomorrowland that you see in the Tomorrowland film, if the movie does well, we can maybe implement it in the parks. And now that Fantastic Four is doing well, I personally think that we might see a new Tomorrowland sort of inspired by that universe. Is it safe to say that 10 years later, Disney is now betting on the success of this new blockbuster to remodel the land? I personally do think that it is safe to say that they're betting on the success of this film to change a land that has been frozen in time for 30 whole years at this point. Now, Disney also does have to compete heavily with Universal Studios. After Epic Universe, it looks like Disney, it was kind of failing in the theme park game. A lot of theme park fans say that. And I understand that things like Villains Land or Pandora and Disney's California Adventure, that's sort of a bigger response to Epic Universe. But I feel like Disney also has to maintain what they have. They can't just keep changing the original lands that people love. And I don't think that they would touch Tomorrowland, in changing it to a brand new land. I think that they actually have a good opportunity here to remodel this land and take care of something that we Disney fans enjoy, or we theme park fans enjoy. I hope that this video has been insightful of my thoughts on Tomorrowland. I hope that it really wasn't too blue sky-like of me. Some of the things that I did mention, like the Wall-E ride, yes, that's what fans want. But honestly, I could see a world where this all fits in. And I really do think that Disney is going to change Tomorrowland. Next week, I will be back with a video going very, very in depth on the Muppets. I know that I had already said that I wanted to do a Muppet video. I'm actually doing it next week. And we're going to detail Muppets, Muppet Vision 3D, and the sad closure. Let me know your thoughts on a brand new Tomorrowland down below, and see you next time.